Hello, everyone, and welcome to your first day in the afterlife. You were all, simply put, good people. But how do we know that you were good? How are we sure? During your time on earth, every one of your actions had a positive or negative value depending on how much good or bad that action put into the universe. Every sandwich you ate, every time you bought a magazine, every single thing you did had an effect that rippled out over time and ultimately created some amount of good or bad. You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic and they think to themselves, who cares? No one's watching. We were watching. Surprise! Anyway, when your time on earth is ending, we calculate the total value of your life. If it measures good enough to outweigh the bad, you get sent here, to the good place. This speech is given by Michael, the architect of the good place, in the television show of the same name. During the month of Elul, we led a series on the good place and the book, The 7 Questions You're Asked in Heaven, based upon our Jewish textual tradition. It was a deep dive into how we live our lives and by which measures we assess them. The main characters in the good place struggle to come to terms with the lives they led, playing out on a grand scale the internal dialogue we experience during the High Holy Days. While their time on earth has come to an end, we strive to improve ourselves in the time that we have left. Over the month of Elul, I also read a book called The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich, which explores a similar vein, following 8 people wrestling with their own mortality in a direct way. How does one measure a life? Is it a matter, as Michael explained, of the sum of good actions equaling more than that of bad actions? Or is it determined by the length of our time here on earth? Is it the responses to the 7 questions our tradition posits will be asked of us at the end of our days? Each year, the High Holy Days present us with the opportunity to evaluate our lives. Within our tradition lies a mechanism that pushes us to reflect on our behavior, the events both positive and negative of the year, and the amount of time and energy we allotted to different pursuits. It asks us to determine if we lived in accordance with our beliefs and values. Based in divine wisdom, our sages designed this framework for reflection that we return to year after year. The month of Elul, turning our attention inward, shining a light on the places where we have missed the mark, then focusing on others as we ask for, grant, and hopefully receive forgiveness. Rosh Hashanah, praying in this beautiful sanctuary, admitting our shortcomings and promising to do better. The Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, putting those promises into practice, a trial run of the year to come. And finally, Yom Kippur, contrite, vulnerable, and sincere, pleading with all our being that we will be inscribed in the book of life for the coming year. The sacred drama our people have participated in for millennia. It demands we take stock of our lives, come face to face with our mortality. It shakes us awake and commands us to consider how we measure our lives. Similar to the point system used in the Good Place, the Jewish scholar Maimonides taught the concept of living as if at every moment the scales of our lives are equally balanced between merit and sin, that the entire world is equally balanced in the same way. If we perform even one sin, we tip the scales toward guilt, bringing destruction. But if we perform one mitzvah, we tip the balance of our own scale and that of the world toward merit. We should live thinking that our next action is the one that will determine the balance for everyone. Each act is a chance to choose goodness. Simple. You do good things, and goodness will fill the earth. You do bad things, and evil will flourish. A person should not lie. It is carved into the tablets above our ark doors. Yet we are taught in Jewish tradition that if a bride asks how she looks on her wedding day, we tell her she is beautiful, even if it is a lie. For a bride is always beautiful on her wedding day. Do we agree that stealing is wrong? What of the father whose child is sick, but living in poverty, he cannot afford the medication that will save his child's life? He breaks into the pharmacy and steals it. Does that tip the scale toward sin or toward merit? A point system, the scales of good and bad seem straightforward until they are not. Rarely do we live in a world of black and white, of virtue and vice. The scales or points may paint an overall picture of how a person lived their life, but on their own, they are not sufficient. So we turn toward the measure to see how it answers the question of how to determine the value of a life. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning to discover exactly how long your life would be. This is the story of the measure. One morning, every adult 22 and older wakes up to discover a beautiful box with the words, "The measure of your life lies within," engraved on the outside with a string inside of it. It does not take experts long to determine that the length of the string corresponds to the length of a person's life. The book follows 8 individuals as they come to terms with their own strings, the strife and division this phenomenon has created in the world, and the consequences, good and bad, that come with intimate knowledge of their mortality. At first, it is utter chaos. Some refuse to look at their strings. Those with the shortest strings grapple with what to do with the small sliver of time remaining, some closing up shop to travel or spend time with family. The long stringers breathe a sigh of relief, though their long life is not a guarantee of ease or comfort. Some short stringers are left by partners with long strings who are too devastated to continue loving someone they will outlive by many years. A number of people, emboldened by their long strings, engage in reckless, dangerous behavior. One character, Hank, is an emergency department doctor with a short string. He despairs that the work he found so fulfilling, saving lives, was meaningless, that the people he helped were already destined to live on. He meets his end at a protest, attempting to protect others. A young man in his short string support group earnestly tells him, "All those people with the long strings who you thought you saved, you did save them. Their strings were long because you were meant to save them. Their strings were long because of you." Many with longer strings begin to turn on those unlike them. They fear death, distancing themselves from it as much as possible. Laws begin to take effect, limiting the kinds of jobs people with short strings can hold. Combat roles in the military require long strings, forcing those who enlist to open their boxes. It becomes a point of contention in the presidential race, one candidate sharing his long string and asking the others to follow suit, already knowing that his stiffest competition possesses a short string. In response, his fellow candidate names presidents who, though their lives were cut short, served this country with poise and wisdom, navigating extremely difficult situations. John F. Kennedy, Franklin Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln. A worldwide event unites short stringers celebrating their accomplishments. Saved 200 lives in surgery, raised 3 children on her own, directed an Oscar-winning film, earned 2 PhDs, defended our country, built an iPhone app, ran for president, married his high school sweetheart, wrote a novel, became an uncle, was valedictorian, produced a Broadway show, made people laugh, was a healer, was a good friend. Slowly, the tide begins to turn and people band together to support those nearing the end of their lives. How could a string be the measure of a life? It is merely a tool, not an indictment of character or determinant of value. These are human beings capable of love, laughter, feats of intellect and physical strength, grief and deep sorrow, agents of social change, parents, siblings, friends. No, a life cannot be measured by its length alone. And what of our sages? They proposed 7 questions a person would be asked at the gates of heaven. I want to single out 2 of those 7. Did you get your priorities straight? And were you the best you that you could be? On priorities, the question comes in 2 parts. Did you seek chokhmah, wisdom? Did you learn binah, to understand one thing from another? Rabbi Ron Wolfson melds the 2 questions, giving the interpretation that follows. Were you able to combine your analytical abilities with your hard-won wisdom from experiences in order to make good choices? In other words, were you able to distinguish between what was really important and what was not, and spend your time and energy accordingly? This is, in large part, the practice for this time in the cycle of the Jewish calendar, our annual spiritual checkup. We must examine our priorities and determine if they still fit. Did we focus on our family, biological and chosen? Did our career take center stage? Did we advocate loudly enough for justice? Did we take time to rest, laugh, and enjoy? Take a moment to think of other priorities you hold. I hope that we carry these with us into 5784. Finally, were you the best you that you could be? There's a story about a scholar and tzaddik named Zusha, who on his deathbed, surrounded by his students, wailed uncontrollably. His students tried to comfort him. Zusha, you were almost as wise as Moshe Rabbeinu, almost as kind as Abraham Avinu. Surely you will merit contentment in the world to come. He replied, when I die and appear before the heavenly tribunal, they will not ask me, Zusha, why were you not as wise as Moses or as kind as Abraham? Rather, they will ask me, Zusha, why were you not Zusha? Rather than live up to impossible ideals, we should strive to be the very best version of ourselves, not anyone else. Perhaps this, then, is how we ought to measure our lives. Another episode of The Good Place introduced us to Doug Forsett, the man who figured out the point system for good and bad deeds. Once he discovered it, he spent the rest of his life focused on only doing good deeds to accrue points. It sounds positive in theory, spending the balance of your life contributing good to the world, but Doug took it to an extreme. He lived a life of solitude and self-sacrifice, in which he was terrified to do anything for his own benefit because of how it would affect his point total. He imagined an accountant out there somewhere measuring the value of everything he did. He did only what made other people happy, even if it made him miserable. At one point, Doug stepped on a snail, and completely beside himself, he tried to tape it back together, instantly killing it. To make up for this, he gave it a funeral and walked several hundred miles to hand deliver a donation to the Canadian Mollusk Association in the snail's honor. He lived, if you can even call it that, in fear. So is the point system laid out in the Good Place how one should measure one's life? No. It is not merely dependent upon good deeds outweighing bad deeds. Is it as first understood in the measure by our time on earth? No. It is not in the days, months, and years counted alone. And however complete the wisdom of our sages in asking the 7 questions, the measure of a life extends beyond them as well. There are multiple systems of measurement in our world. In the United States, we use the imperial system, while many other countries utilize the metric system. Our biblical text describes a different system for building measurements when describing the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Here, we measure ingredients in ounces and cups, while in other locales, they use milliliters. In Israel, if you say the room is 70 degrees, they'll laugh at you because they measure temperature in degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit. These are some simple examples with mathematical answers. I cannot even begin to tell you the right way to measure a life. There are so many different ways in which we measure our world, so why should our lives be any different? Lives are personal and profound. Our values, beliefs, and ethics guide us, and they are one way that we can measure. But the combination of them is unique to each individual. During the days of awe, our holiest days of the year, may we make time to reflect on both our deeds and our principles. May we contemplate our mortality, and in so doing, align our bodies, minds, and spirits to be our best selves. May we will it into existence in this new year, 5784. Ken yehi ratzon, may it be God's will. Amen.
Amen. Every second, every minute, every hour, every day, everything, everyone, every place, every way, where you stand, where you walk, where you love, where you praise. All of it is holy ground. Every he, every she, every what, every who. It's in her, it's in me, it's in them, it's in you. And it's bitter in the sweet, in the calm, in the storm. All of life is holy ground. So walk as if it's holy ground. Breathe as if it's all around. Talk and make a holy sound. Take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. When you hurt, when you heal, when you laugh, when you pray, when you doubt, when you keep, when you give it away. Every second, every minute, every hour, every day. Take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. So walk as if it's holy ground. Breathe as if it's all around. Talk walk and make a holy sound. Take your shoes off your own holy ground. One story, one journey, one tapestry we weave. One people, one glory, one legacy we leave. Every second, every minute, every hour, every day, everything, everyone, every place, every way, where you stand, where you walk, where you love, where you praise, all of it is holy ground. Can you feel the holy ground? Take your shoes off your own holy ground.